Good morning. I'm Barry from the internet, president of Grindstone Ministries and founder of Grindstone Ministries. Today is the 15th of October, 2024, and I'm going to do my best to tell you, based upon my own observations and the observations of my team in Western North Carolina, Eastern Tennessee, what it is that we have experienced, what we are seeing. I'm getting 5x5s in the chat, so thank you. Shalom. I'm going to do my best to keep this brief and concise, but we have a lot of ground to cover. So to everybody who's watching live, listening live right now, please hold your questions until the end. Repeat, please hold your questions until the end because we have a lot of ground to cover. All right. So approximately 10 days ago, I was in Eastern Oklahoma. And I left from Eastern Oklahoma to head to Eastern Tennessee. Grindstone is based out of Eastern Oklahoma, Spiro, Oklahoma. Now, Grindstone had personnel on the ground in Eastern Tennessee after Hurricane Helene, I believe 26 hours after the storm hit, and began spinning up operations. I had pastoral responsibilities, and I was unable to be there immediately, but our executive director, as well as a staff of volunteers, was on site almost immediately after the storm. I left Eastern Tennessee, and I went to Camden, Tennessee to speak at the Self-Reliance Festival, whereas the Spirit would have it, I had written a talk called Surviving Communism in the Countryside prior to Hurricane Helene even being a thing. And so I gave that talk at Self-Reliance Festival in light of what Grindstone had been experiencing in Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina. There also was a wedding and 12 baptisms that I was blessed to perform in Camden, Tennessee. So it was beautiful. It was wonderful. We left Camden ahead of schedule because the conviction was to get to Eastern Tennessee, specifically Jonesboro, Tennessee, where Grindstone had established a FOB, a forward operating base at the Cherry Grove Baptist Church. Out of Cherry Grove Baptist Church, the primary mission that we are performing currently, because this is a hurricane, not a tornado, is distribution of goods. A hurricane does a moderate amount of damage over a very large area, or a tornado does a severe amount of damage in a very small area. Appalachia is great at a lot of things. It's not great at hurricanes because they are literally unprecedented in Appalachia. And when you overlay a hurricane over the top of the topography in Appalachia, things get very, very complicated. So the primary mission that Grindstone has been fulfilling in Appalachia, Eastern Tennessee, and Western North Carolina is distribution of goods, food, water, fuel, medicine, med calls through our medical professionals, initially search and rescue and cadaver dogs, air missions, and to a much lesser extent, debris and SAW teams. So the damage profile of a hurricane is different. And because of the topography, there's a massive amount of flooding that took place in this area, and there's a massive amount of isolation. Again, debris management is predominantly what Grindstone does, especially after tornadoes. But this was a hurricane. Now, doing an aerial survey in a helicopter, I observed over 60 different places on the mountaintops where there was definitely tornadic damage, myself personally. And for context, this is Grindstone's 46th deployment in 5.5 years, and I myself have been doing disaster relief for 19 years. So I know what tornado damage looks like versus hurricane damage versus flooding. Over 60 mountaintops that had tornadic damage on top of them. Does that indicate weather modification? Probably. in my experience. I can't say definitively because in the intelligence cycle, we have to rightly divide between what we think and what we know. And I don't know, but I definitely think. Okay. So over 60 different mountaintops with tornadic damage on them is surveyed by my own eyes in a helicopter, in addition to the damage caused by the hurricane and the significant rainfall that turned into flooding, which turned into mudslides and 30-foot walls of mud, wiping entire towns and villages off the map, especially in western North Carolina. That being said, the local populace, and to a lesser extent, the reporting, both national mainstream news media and to a much greater extent, social media, individual reporting coming out, has made most of this damage appear as if it is the end of the world as we know it. Now, taking nothing away from the people who lost everything on strictly a damage scale, just a damage scale, this is a 1.5 out of 10. But it's a widespread 5 states, 1.5 out of 10. I have seen far worse damage with my own eyes. You haven't lived until you've seen one house stacked on top of another house like a club sandwich, and the toothpick is a Peterbilt semi that's been driven through it. And that's just Tuesday. That's one house on one block. And that happened in Rolling Fork, Mississippi, after an EF4, initially classified as an EF4 type tornado and then upgraded to an EF5. That's just Tuesday. That's just what a tornado looks like. So on a damage scale alone, 1.5 out of 10, but a very widespread 1.5 out of 10. Now, we also have to rightly divide between relief and recovery. Relief is short-term sustainment of life: food, water, shelter, medicine, warming, keeping people warm, thermoregulation, warm in the winter, cool in the summer. And then recovery is the long-term recovery effort to put things back together again. Grindstone is a disaster relief organization. We are a nationally registered 501c3. We have the same authority as the American Red Cross, but we are privately funded. We don't bill the homeowner, we don't bill the municipality, we don't bill the state, and we don't bill the federal government, which means nobody gets to tell us what to do, which means typically government at all levels doesn't really like us, and that's okay, because I'm not here for them to like us. I'm here to love people in the model of Messiah, to be his hands and feet. And so we work directly with property owners, not the county, not the state, not the federal government. But on this particular storm, we are authorized to operate in the state of Tennessee by the Secretary of State of the state of Tennessee and the governor's office. So while we don't need their permission, we are authorized to be there, and we have been there since 26 hours after the storm. We are still there now, even though I am back in Oklahoma because I have more pastoral duties to perform here. And when I finish here in Oklahoma, I will rotate back to Tennessee and Western North Carolina. So the relief effort is shifting to a recovery effort. And so what that means for us is that SAW teams and heavy equipment aren't really needed. I have SAW teams and heavy equipment coming out of my ears. And bless you, every one of you who has shown up and donated your time, volunteered your time, your equipment, your fuel, your bank account to come love your neighbor as yourself. We have plenty, P for plenty, way more than we need. Because while the disaster is widespread, it's a 1.5 out of 10. If you want to serve, we need people who will serve on the distribution side, logistics, truck drivers, pickup trucks, box trucks, people at the fob taking orders. See, we are, when I say distribution, we are Amazon Prime for hill people. You tell me what you need, and I will have it to your doorstep in 24 hours. That is what we are doing now. That is the mission, predominantly distribution. It's not debris management. It's not SAW teams. It's not heavy equipment. It's Amazon for hill people. That is what we are doing. If you want to serve in that capacity, please email serve@grindstoneministries.com. Serve@grindstoneministries.com. If you are in the disaster affected area, firsthand account, and you need help, not I heard, not somebody said, not I saw on Twitter or X or TikTok or Instagram or somebody post on Facebook, not that. You personally in the disaster affected areas of Western North Carolina or Eastern Tennessee, you need help. Please email needs@grindstoneministries.com. Needs@grindstoneministries.com. Please hold all questions until the end. I need zero distractions right now. This is one of the most important pieces of content I've ever made because we're very quickly going to transition to all the things that I have personally observed that make this particular storm very odd. Very odd. And again, as a baseline, this is Grindstone's 46th deployment in 5.5 years, and I've been doing disaster relief for 19 years. I have a strong baseline for normalcy and chaos, and this is not normal. Now, governmental players in this area. You have the local government, which in this case is at the county level. The counties have mayors, not the towns. You also have myriad churches, most of which are good people, good leadership, trying to love their neighbor as themselves, some of which are not. Some of which are basically an extension of the political arm in the county. And I disdain that, just to be on the record. You have state emergency management, state DOT, state law enforcement. You have the federal government, predominantly arms of DHS, Department of Homeland Security, because FEMA is one of 19 agencies, Federal Emergency Management Agency is one of 19 agencies under the banner of DHS. And not only has FEMA been observed in the area, but other DHS agencies have been observed in the area as well. And then you have the DoD, the Department of Defense. 82nd, 101st, American or Army National Guard. You've got a lot of just rando units out there. That's the governmental side of things. And bureaucrats from the local volunteer assistant fire chief all the way up to, top dog for FEMA in the area. And you never know who it is that you're brushing up against. But I will tell you this, of all the storms I've ever worked, the government has never helped. And the recovery has been accomplished in spite of the government, not because of it. This one's different. It appears as if, again, rightly dividing between what I think and what I know, it appears as if they are working against the recovery. And we'll get into that in a moment. Now, another sign that we're moving from relief to recovery is that air missions have gone from literally rescuing babies and old women and sling loading supplies into isolated areas to airdropping Pop-Tarts. Okay, so that gives you an idea of the gravity of the situation. And again, observe this with my own eyes. We're going to airdrop Pop-Tarts. That's not insulin. That's not oxygen. That's not life-saving medical equipment. That's not extracting isolated personnel. That's not people in dire need. We're airdropping Pop-Tarts. Okay, so op tempo has changed. Priorities have changed. And again, Grindstone's primary mission is debris management, SAW teams, and heavy equipment. We have hauled less debris on this entire deployment thus far than we did in one day, our slowest day in Barnesville, Oklahoma, which was an EF3 tornado, small localized tornado. Okay. So when it comes to the scope is very large, 5 states. But the impact, and again, taking nothing away from the people who lost everything, it is not chaos actual. It is not the end of the world as we know it. It's a 1.5 out of 10 when it comes to a damage assessment. Okay. Now, let's switch gears to oddities. Mark time 1524. Please share this show with somebody you love. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. This is the part that's super important that needs to get out, but I had to lay that baseline first. By the way, to all my brothers and sisters in the preparedness space that are producing content around lessons learned from Hurricane Helene, I will have that content coming as well from a boots on the ground standpoint with my observations. And I say this in love. I know some of y'all were out there helping people, but most of y'all weren't. The reporting that's coming out, including the social media reporting, most of it's wrong. Most of it's wrong. And so I would be very careful to draw any lessons learned from Hurricane Helene unless you've been there yourself. Okay? Now, oddities. I got a whole whiteboard of them. In fact, go ahead and take a screenshot, and I'll just go ahead and say right now, I'm not suicidal, and I didn't kill myself. Here, microphone's in the way. Screenshot that. Okay? Where shall we begin? There's a town, or more like a village, in Little Germany, outside of Jonesboro, Tennessee. It had 70 homes. It's now down to 40 individuals. It was 42, but this village was cut off and isolated by the storm. Flooding wiped the road out. It was 42 and now it's 40 because very interesting study, detached study in the psychology of SHTF. 2 people committed suicide. One was definitely a suicide. The other one's questionable because they didn't want to play anymore. They lost the will to live. This community was isolated from everything, and their only line to the outside world for the first, I believe it was 7 days, was a 5-watt Baofeng radio. That's it. So if you don't know Kamo, you better learn Kamo. We began running supplies overland, packing them in. There's footage of this on my channel. Tennessee Department of Transportation was not going to rebuild their road. They were just going to leave them isolated, cut off. We filmed content, and then a local showed up with a track hoe and started rebuilding the road. So we started running loads and dump trucks of rock and dirt to them, at which point TDOT decided, no, we'll rebuild the 400 meters of road. We will issue a contract to Summers Contracting for $2 million to build 400 meters of road. Okay, whatever. And they'll have the road up in 4 days so that people can get in and out of Little Germany. Okay, deal. You guys handle it. Yeah, that number is now 3 to 4 weeks to get the road back up. Little Germany is cut off. Politicians, air missions over Little Germany. We were flying air missions into Little Germany with our helicopter. What's up, Dusty and Kyle? You guys are amazing. But then all of a sudden, the airspace over Little Germany was changed to military airspace only, military aircraft only. And they put 60s on it to service Little Germany. Except instead of stopping, landing, offloading supplies, they were just doing flyovers. When they did land, they flew local, state, and federal politicians into Little Germany to promise everything to their face. Oh, we're going to take care of you, whatever we can do. But listen, we're out of funding. We'll find the funding, but we're going to take care of you. But then they didn't. They didn't drop supplies. They didn't drop med. They didn't drop commo. These people were completely cut off. And then, oh, by the way, these same politicians are hosting what they literally call secret meetings every Thursday. Where in said secret meeting, where I was invited to one, big mistake, they're sitting there talking about little Germany, bad mouthing it to each other. What are we going to do about little Germany? Yeah, whatever. Who cares? Two-faced politicians. And I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm here to help people and love people, and I answer to nobody but the creator of the universe. And we're here for the preservation of life. And I don't care about small town politics. I don't care whatever backstory was predating little Germany. These people were fearfully and wonderfully created in the image of their creator. And it's a shame that I got to drive 801 miles to love my neighbor as myself when you live there and you're pandering for political reasons. Little Germany, I think, has been isolated because underneath Little Germany and the surrounding areas are seams of lithium. Now, adjacent to Little Germany is an area called Bumpus Cove. Bumpus Cove, by the way, anybody within the sound of my voice in the area needs to be taking water samples and soil samples and sending them to independent labs, not the state labs. Although I would recommend you take 3 or 4 samples, send one to the state lab, and then send the remainder to independent labs so you can compare what the state lab is saying, or have they been bought off, against what the independent labs are saying. They're already testing wells in Bumpus Cove because TDEC, Tennessee Department of Environmental Quality, learned about a decade ago that the water in Bumpus Cove was trash because people were getting sick, really sick, strange cancers, goiters, boils, weird looking deer running through the area. Massive amounts of heavy metal in the soil of Bumpus Cove already. Now, the river that washed past Little Germany and into Bumpus Cove and continued on down from there has chemical plants washed into it. All kinds of cadavers, all kinds of dead animals, PVC manufacturing plant, nuclear fuels. Repeat, nuclear fuels. Rumant, at least one person who was working in that area was admitted to the hospital for radiation sickness. Rumant, unconfirmed, working on confirming it. Underneath that, and the land actual in that area, Little Germany, Bumpus Cove, is owned by a mining company. Now, North Carolina, and to a lesser extent Tennessee, Eastern Tennessee, are very much so involved in the Green New Deal, green energy. They want lithium to make batteries for cars. I'm not looking at super chats right now. I'm not looking at comments right now. Do not send anything else to 104 Cherry Grove, please. Do not send anything else to 104 Cherry Grove. Coordinate everything through grindstoneministries.com. And I'm not going to be distracted by the chat right now. I cannot. All super chats, all comments, hold them till the end. A mining company owns that whole area, Little Germany, Bumpus Cove. And the lithium underneath the soil seems to be the predicate for what appears to be a federally enforced land grab. I think, do not know, because this is way bigger than me. Now, speaking of federally enforced land grab, confirmed by our people on the ground, I have pics. Border Patrol, SRT, is doing security for FEMA. Not everywhere. Here's a pic. Okay. You can screenshot that too if you want to. If it'll focus. It's trying to. Not everywhere for FEMA, just in areas of Western North Carolina where FEMA is running up to 30 minivans filled with FEMA agents who deny to be FEMA, even though they have FEMA windbreakers. So, are they actually FEMA who's denying to be FEMA? Or are they not FEMA, but they have FEMA windbreakers as cover for action, going into areas where entire towns were wiped off the map with cadaver dogs? Rumant, the cadaver dogs are hitting on entire valleys, not just one area, because entire towns were wiped off the map. I talked to one woman who was the only survivor of the 60 plus homes that were in her holler that were wiped away by a 30-foot wall of mud that slid down the mountain. There are 12 people in her home. She's the only one that survived, and she's the only survivor of that entire holler. And the whole place just looks like a pile of mud. The official death count is 213 bodies. I spoke to one coroner in one county that had 1,200 bodies stacked in reefer trailers. Spoke to local emergency management that said they were stacking ambulances with body bags like cordwood in the back of them. One location in Swannanoa, North Carolina, went through 10 to 12,000 body bags. And Rumant, National Guard bulldozers are what's pushing those areas flat. There are thousands of bodies in the river and underneath the mud. This is all what has come across our intel desk at our talk at our fob, not what the internet has said. So not only has Border Patrol SRT been observed in the area, lots of other rando, very interesting security agencies are in the area. Now, that being said, this area houses the nuclear fuels for our nuclear arsenal. Shh, don't tell anyone. As well as manufactures all the RDX for our artillery shells. Shh, don't tell anyone. As well as is incredibly rich in lithium and gypsum and silica, which is required for the Green New Deal as well as the AI revolution. Again, the river is dangerous. We have been telling our people, our volunteers with Grindstone Ministries, don't get in the river. Do not pull water from the river for any application, and stay out of the silt, stay out of the mud, because the ground was contaminated before we got there. It's definitely contaminated now. Repeat, you have to, if you are in the area, you have to be taking soil samples, document when they were taken, where they were taken, and take soil samples 6 inches below the surface and 24 inches below the surface, and take multiple samples from the same location and send one to the state for testing and 2 or 3 to other independent labs so you can compare, contrast the results, soil and water. There are already myriad monitoring wells in the area because the area was already polluted. People are already getting sick there. And so these particular areas, Little Germany, Bumpus Cove, and others, I believe, are simply being abandoned. There's already reports they're being abandoned because they want what's underneath the ground. And there are already reports from my guys in the field that people are driving around trying to buy up the land, and in some cases are buying up the land pennies on the dollar because it's been destroyed. The Forest Service, many impromptu roads have been cut in for access to cut off communities. The Forest Service has come along and said that they were going to take their dozers in there, push those roads in to make them even more passable so that supplies can pass. And instead, what they did was say, nope, these roads are too dangerous. These are for military and law enforcement use only. No civilian organizations, no civilians, including the residents, are allowed to use them, further isolating the people who are stuck up on the sides of these mountains. Coincidence, I'm sure. Again, critical airspace for resupply of stranded individuals was made military airspace only. Only. And there's tons now of military aircraft in the area, but they're not running resupply missions. They're not sling loading. They're not dropping in supplies. They're not providing goods and services. They're patrolling airspace. They're also flying down the riverbeds real slow. And the rumor has been, well, they're looking for cadavers. I don't think they are. I think they're sniffing. And Monkey Works, if you're out there, would love to collab with you on this. Somebody please send this to Monkey Works. Get at me, shoot me an email. You can find me at bearindependent.com. Because there's not just UH-60s, there are MH-60s in the area. Refueling equipment sticking out of these helicopters. Multiple occasions, air quote, doctors with no doctor's bag, no credentials, no ID have showed up to our fob wanting to be taken into these remote communities to administer air quote vaccinations to people. I personally have run off 2 of them, one doctor, air quote doctor, twice. You are not welcome here. If I see you again, we're going to have problems. Don't come back. Let me see your ID. Well, I don't have an ID. You're a doctor. Well, I left all my stuff at home. What? No, but you just have a bag full of vaccines, air quote, you want to go give people? Negative. And multiple reports in other isolated communities at other FOBs of that happening as well. FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, is taking credit for work that is being performed by NGOs and the locals. FEMA in Washington County, Tennessee, where our FOB is located, has listed their #1 distribution site located at 104 Cherry Grove. That's us. We don't work for FEMA. We don't work with FEMA. So we contacted them and said, take our name off of your bullshit. They did. But they also, in North Carolina, have been driving around with a minivan filled with people that are, jeans, work boots, gloves, safety vests, hard hats, driving up to areas where people are already working with a camera crew from 60 Minutes, hopping out, doing photo shoots and shooting short snippets of video. When they get what they want, they hop back in the van and drive away to make it appear as if the response to this storm is being performed by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. It is not. FEMA is sitting at their FOB, at their desk, confirmed by us, because we do intel stuff, playing video games in the midst of all of this. There are, shifting gears, hundreds of condemned homes, and they should be condemned because they were flooded by this mud from the river that is incredibly unsafe. Hundreds of condemned homes. But the fact that those homes were condemned was not communicated by emergency management personnel. So the property owners then went into these homes, mucked all of that toxic mud out of their homes, opened the walls, pulled the insulation, began new insulation, new drywall, new flooring, started putting their home back together again, with emergency management knowing that it's just a matter of time before FEMA comes in and bulldozes those homes anyway. It's part of why Grindstone has had very little debris to haul, because I am not going to do FEMA's dirty work. And it should have been communicated by both FEMA and the emergency management organizations that these homes are condemned. But because both of those groups, organizations, lack a pair of balls, they didn't tell the homeowners. So the homeowners have been rebuilding their homes that are going to be bulldozed anyway. There are also, going back to DoD personnel, civil affairs, air quote, civil affairs units running around in the towns and in the hillside, confirmed, our eyeballs, wearing multicam uniforms with no name tapes, guys with beards that are very clearly, at a minimum, infantry dudes, if not soft dudes. Very clearly. For what purpose? Area denial. And speaking of area denial, observed with our own eyes, LRAD, laser microwave area denial devices have been brought in as well, which leads us to this whole FEMA is leaving because of the militia in the area. I personally have observed no militia anywhere. I have observed lots of people, us, Appalachistanians, and many others that are just good old boys with guns on their hips. I have seen nobody in full kit with rifles other than security in certain places. There's DOD and Department of Homeland Security, but none of the citizenry in kit with rifles. I've seen no pickup trucks, and I've gotten no reports of pickup trucks filled with people with rifles. So this whole the militia said they're hunting FEMA thing, it may have occurred because it's impossible to keep track of all the indicators that are going on in this situation because commo is down, and I think in large part that's intentional. I think in large part they are hoping for a media blackout on this event because they, I think, want to seize the land and bulldoze it for the lithium and for the graphene and for the silica that's underneath the soil. Okay. But I've seen no militias starting any shit with FEMA. I've seen tons of people that look like they could be militia if they took their safety vest off and put a plate carrier on, because that's what we look like and that's what everybody else looks like. But I think the 101st and the 82nd, who pulled out already, and the Army National Guard, which Rumint stood down because they got into an argument with the on-site director of FEMA, which is amazing because the Army National Guard is who is supposed to be hauling all of the debris for this storm, and now they're not doing it. Federal mismanagement. And FEMA all stood down because they wanted the plausible deniability to get out of the area because the area is toxic, and that is not being communicated. I also think it creates the opportunity for potentially a false flag operation for them to come in and seize the area, push everybody else out, and then do whatever they want to do with it, i.e., strip mine the entire valley. Oh, and yes, there are reports. There are existing lithium mines there. And yes, some of them are owned by BlackRock and shell companies and cutouts and limited liability partnerships. It's very weird. And I'm just a guy from Oklahoma who came out there to love people, distribute food, water, medicine, run a chainsaw, run a skid steer. And we are doing that tactically. Operationally, we're in Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina. Strategically, there's so many weird things happening on this one. I can't even begin to explain it all. And that's what I'm trying to do today. So I think that part of the reason why there might be claims of militia pushing these groups out, FEMA, the 82nd, the 101st, the Army National Guard, is because the ground and the water are toxic and people are already getting sick. And the citizens are already trying to move back into these homes that are just going to make them sick, that should have been bulldozed in the first place. I'm in agreement those homes should come down because they're toxic. I'm not in agreement that it should not have been communicated yet that they're toxic and allow people to start rebuilding them, because you're going to destroy what little bit of hope those people have left. Lastly, there are warehouses full of supplies everywhere. Bristol Motor Speedway, that became the main collection point for this disaster in eastern Tennessee and western North Carolina, is overrun and not taking any more supplies. They're full. Our fob in Cherry Grove is pretty much full. Unless we solicit for individual things, we are good on receiving supplies. If you're already inbound, come on with it. But if you were thinking about coming with supplies, bless you, please don't. Out of our fob, we're supporting a half a dozen other distribution sites in western North Carolina that we are, again, we're the Amazon of Hill people. We're pushing out supplies to the Upper Pigeon Roost Free Will Baptist Church and the Bailey Church and the Poplar Community Center and Camp Miller and I don't remember where else, and Fender's Farm and South Shore, and they're full. Praise Yah, they're full. The supplies are getting to the people that need them. That's the whole point, which again indicates the shift from relief, solving immediate life and death problems, to recovery, the long-term rebuilding. And as an indicator there, again, just two indicators there. Literal air missions are being flown for Pop-Tarts. That's retarded. Those are very expensive Pop-Tarts, which means it's probably time to cease 95% of the air missions. And B, the schools are back in session. Schools are back in session. So that means we're entering the recovery phase. Now, there are literal warehouses full of supplies, some of which are controlled by FEMA because the jurisdiction in which they are in chose to take FEMA funds for recovery. And when you take federal money, you get federal problems. You can't have it both ways. So if you take federal funds, if your county took federal funds, you now have federal oversight, part of which is the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. Again, going back to what's underneath the ground here. Do some research on the geologic makeup of that region. Trillions of dollars in minerals, both of which the two primary industries that those minerals affect is renewable energy, Green New Deal, and the AI revolution. And for context, we pulled out of Afghanistan very poorly, and so we lost access to those minerals that were there, and we're losing access to African minerals due to BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, etc., which means we need domestic production of these minerals. This is not the way to go about it, but I think this is how they're going about it. And I think there's very high scale strategic collusion here between major industry and the federal government to have access to create an opportunity to get access to the minerals that are underneath the ground here. And so there are warehouses full of material, not seized by FEMA. That's very important. Not seized by FEMA, but under FEMA's jurisdiction in those areas because those municipalities chose to take FEMA funding for the recovery. And when you take federal dollars, you get federal problems. And as a result, one of the downstream problems here is that FEMA doesn't distribute anything. They're not built for it. So those resources will be sequestered at the warehouses because FEMA doesn't do distribution. So it's just sheriffs must step up, says Sandra Burke. The sheriffs are elected officials in the county that now has federal oversight. There's nothing to step up to in those districts that took the FEMA funding. That's what people are misunderstanding. They don't understand the mechanisms as to how these things work. So, in my observation, FEMA hasn't been seizing anything. they've been redirecting donations to the warehouses that have FEMA oversight because those jurisdictions took FEMA money. I hope that makes sense. So, with that, very quickly, I'll answer some questions. Put them in all caps in the chat. And if I see it, I'll answer it. I also want to give a very, very strong shout out to all the volunteers who have come out to volunteer with Grindstone Ministries. Thank you for your time and your dime to love your neighbor as yourself. Thank you for the good works you are doing. Thank you for shining the light of Christ onto this situation, regardless of what the federal, state, and local governments are trying to do, are doing. We are out there and making a difference because our God is God. And the 1,000 instances that we have observed of miraculous provision are witness to the works that you are doing there in his name. So thank you. And thank you to everybody who has bought off the Amazon wish list. And this is a continuing operation. To be clear, Grindstone is still in Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina, and we are going to continue to be Amazon for Hill people. And that is accomplished in large part by the Amazon wish list and by the donations at grindstoneministries.com. So thank you to every one of you. And thank you to all my YouTube friends who are helping us crowdfund the resistance for the Great American Captivity, Day 15. The awareness of what is happening there is coming through YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, X, TikTok. So thank you to Johnny B. Thank you to Jared at Guns and Gadgets. Thank you to Wrangler Star. Thank you to all the other channels that have partnered with us. Thank you to J.A. Dudley, who is a one-man S9 shop. Thank you to Amron, our commo shop. Without Amron, we would not be able to communicate up into these hills, and people would have died. So thank you to Amron. Thank you to my S2 shop at the Talk. You guys are killing it. Thank you to everybody in the yard right now at Cherry Grove, working the fob, doing distro right now, looking at it, one more cardboard box and wondering, does this even matter? The answer is yes, it matters. You are sustaining life for people that otherwise would have no way to sustain their own life. Literally. You are literally saving people's lives. Every one of you. To the ladies inside the fob, administrating, filling out paperwork. You sleep here. Here's your air mattress. Here's a cot. Every single hand that is poured into Grindstone Ministries. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. We started this 5.5 years ago with a minivan and drove to Florida just to love people. And now we're running cross-border operations via rotor wing aircraft as driven by the S2 shop. Bro, praise the Most High. What a long way we have come. And not for our glory, but for his. Our impact is amazing. It is huge. And I could not do this without every one of you. And so I thank you for that immensely. Elisha, when you get back to Tennessee, can you tell my husband Kermode that I said thank you for being a man of Yah? I hugged him yesterday morning and told him that, but I will tell him that again. Alan Summers, best intel I've heard yet. Bear, you and Grindstone Ministries are a true blessing from Yah to the people who have been affected by the hurricane. May Yah bless you and your family. Thank you, Torah Prepper. Have you seen many insurance agencies helping at all? I'm guessing probably not. I have not personally observed a single insurance agency, and I have not gotten a single report from 4 different recce teams and an entire S2 shop about a single insurance company. Not one. Do these people need winter wear? Maurice, yes, they do. Yes, they do. What's up, Iridium Group? Bless you, brother. Is there a list of counties that took FEMA money? Probably somewhere. Probably at FEMA.gov there is. Mike Gunner said, Bear, my daughter was there, Western North Carolina, to rescue some horses. She said when they got them to safety, they were acting very strange. When tests were done, they found toxic levels unheard of. I'm telling you. And this is part of why Grindstone is not mucking houses. I don't want our people in these houses. We don't want them in the silt. We have pallets of PPE for anybody that has to go anywhere near it. There is bad stuff in the water. There is bad stuff in the silt. There are, again, soil samples and water samples. There will be class action lawsuits from this. There will be. Start doing your homework now. And for anybody that wants to black cube me or come after me or whatever, that's cute, homie. Get in line. I've already got a line of people that don't like me and want to see me dead. And I have some incredibly capable homies. So we'll just leave it at that. Bear, why is the ground so toxic? Dead bodies, septic systems, PVC chemical plants, concrete plants, nuclear fissile materials have all washed into that river. By the way, the river in question in eastern Tennessee is called the Nola Chucky, which literally means river of death in Cherokee. Stay out of the water. Don't drink the water. I would not pull from a single water source unless it was 500 foot above the river or more. Journey of John. Did you enjoy the cigar? Yes, I did. Bless you, Escape with Jay. Bless you. Are your volunteers getting health checks? Yes, they are. We've been blessed to have doctors, like legit doctors that are part of Grindstone, come out. Many, many nurses, physician's assistants, EMTs, paramedics, combat medics, all come out as part of Grindstone. There's a safety brief at 0730 and 1930 every day. There's an entire clinic spun up for Grindstone. We built a field hospital. Yes. Are you doing okay? Mason, I'm doing good. I've had the same head cold for 3 weeks, and my voice has been gone for 10 days, which is challenging because part of what I do is talk at an iPhone, and whatever. I'll deal with it. Question: how can I convince family members what's truly going on in Eastern Tennessee, Western North Carolina, who only see that FEMA is leaving because of the militia? Ian, I don't know. I don't know. There are so many unknowns here. And that, again, I will say for the third time, we have to divide between what we think and what we know. And that's why I've been very clear to say rumant at times when it was rumor intelligence during this brief that I put up this morning. I don't know. This picture of what is happening in Western North Carolina is so big, I can barely wrap my head around it. This is the first time I've even remotely organized my thoughts. And I will again state, I don't work for FEMA. Grindstone Ministries doesn't work for FEMA. We don't work with FEMA. We are authorized by the governor and the state secretary of state of Tennessee to be in Eastern Tennessee, and by extension, Western North Carolina, to do what we do, which is love people, help people in spite of the government, not because of it. Our primary mission on this is Amazon for Hill people. Get people the things that they need so that they don't die. And we're doing that. That's our primary mission. Somewhere 12th down on the list is figure out the grand international conspiracy that affected the weather and therefore the response in Eastern Tennessee, Western North Carolina. So we've dedicated some time to it because it does affect operations on the ground, but we haven't dedicated tons of time to it. That being said, I will say again, Tim Pool, James O'Keefe, Glenn Beck, and anybody else, um, Valuetainment, anybody else that wants to talk to me about this, get at me. Contact me through Bear Independent. And we've got receipts. So, and I don't really operationally for Grindstone care because Grindstone's mission is to help people in times of disaster, and we're doing that. However, from a Bear Independent standpoint, there's a lot of shenanigans going on here. Anything you saw that would change your own AO? No, I'm very comfortable with where I am from a preparedness standpoint in Eastern Oklahoma. That being said, if you do not have a solid, and I mean solid, water plan, commo plan, and backup generation plan, like solid, you need to really assess your situation. YouTuber Wrangler Star came out and helped you all out. He couldn't praise you all enough. Gabrielle D, let me tell you something. I'd never met Cody Wrangler Star until a few days ago. I love that man. He has a piece about him that is uncommon in this day and age. He has an excellent heart. He asked phenomenal. He did Shabbat with us. We had a 3-hour Bible study. It was beautiful, and it was also the Day of Atonement observation for us. And he did atonement with us, and we had beautiful conversation. He asked so many wonderful questions, and he's just genuinely a good man. He is genuinely a good man, and that is seemingly rare in today's day and age. But I'll use that to segue into this. We have to rightly divide between the government of the United States of America and the people of the United States of America. The quality of people, just normal people. I'm not talking about government people at the county level, the state level, or the federal level. I'm not talking about agency people. I'm not even talking about church leadership because some of them are scumbags too. I'm talking about people, just regular people, is astounding. I love these people. Every one of these volunteers that's come out for Grindstone, every one of the volunteers through the Cherry Grove Baptist Church, their whole church of people is just out there killing it. 9 to 5 every day, doing distribution, feeding people, hugging people, loving on people. Shout out to Pastor Craig. He's amazing. And to Sandy and to Miss Pat, who runs the food distribution. They're killing it. And all these random people in all these little towns and villages, all up throughout the hills, they're amazing human beings. And the resilience of Americans is unmatched. Our government is shit, but our people are incredible. And we have to remember that. And it's the people that are affecting positive change here. It is in no way the government. And Cody, Wrangler Star, he is good people. That is a good man. I would love at some point just to sit down and drink a cup of coffee with him. But it has been organized chaos since I got to Eastern Tennessee, Western North Carolina. And my goal as president of Grindstone Ministries was to come in and help implement systems to make order out of chaos. And we did that. We've been doing that. It's been working. And to our executive director, Kyle, and to everybody who was on the initial team that went in there and responded to the chaos actual and created a foothold for me to come in and then implement systems so that we can move forward. I love you guys too. You've done an amazing job, an absolutely amazing job. This is just an unprecedented, weird storm. Has FEMA obstructed Grindstone in any way? Access or airspace? Airspace, yes. Access, no. Can you assist with fostering a family or couples for winter housing? we're going to let the local church communities handle that because I don't know any of the people on either end. And I'm very sensitive to potential people problems because of what we do with Caleb House. I'm not going to put somebody who could be a weirdo in somebody else's home. And I'm not going to put somebody else into the home of a weirdo because of what we do with Caleb House. And so that's not something Grindstone's going to be doing. That being said, there have been, I think, 5 people thus far who have stepped up to donate camper trailers or fifth wheels for people who have lost their homes. And that is something that I am interested in. If you would like to do that, serve@grindstoneministries.com is your email address because we can get those up into the hills, get them set up for people to have a place to overwinter. Is there any danger to breathing the dust in those areas? 100% T. Russell. That's why we have N95s and respirators because the dust is just the silt particulate that's gone airborne. Even if it's just silicosis, there's a high amount of silica in the soil there. Silicosis will kill you over time. So that's the show for today. I love every one of you. Please share this show. Again, mark time at 15:30. Start the oddities, the strange things that are going on out there. Thank you for supporting this show. Thank you to every one of the patrons, patreon.com, who support me so that I can do this. Thank you to everybody who's poured into us at grindstoneministries.com. Thank you to everybody who has prayed over this mission. Keep the guys and girls out there in the field under prayer, covered in prayer. And remember, our God is God, and He is sovereign over all things. And I am 0% afraid of anything but Him. I will see y'all when I see you. Shalom.